Okay, so let's talk about a book that really shouldn't exist. It's this cultural thing that's so controversial, some people have tried to ban it, while others hold it up as this treasured cult classic. We're talking about John Norman's Imaginative Sex. And to even begin to understand its power, you've really got to wrap your head around a paradox. And this quote, I mean, this says it all, doesn't it? It comes from the prominent feminist and BDSM author Pat Califia, and she wrote it in the book's own foreword. It just lays out the fundamental question right there. Sex is pig and consistently rewarding material. How can a text be both of those things at the same time? Well, that's exactly what we're here to unpack. So to get started, we have to dig into this core contradiction, and we're going to do it through Califia's eyes. Her perspective is really the key to understanding the book's wild reputation and why it splits people right down the middle, even in communities you'd think would be its biggest fans. And here, Califia just lays out the conflict perfectly. So on one side, you have the sexist pig part. She calls it out for being relentlessly heterosexual, for using really crude stereotypes, and for leaning on some pretty dated sociobiology. But then, on the other side, she admits it provides this delicious, guilty feeling, that it's a powerful tool for fantasy that taps into these big, archetypal situations. That's the rewarding part.
Okay, so with all that controversy laid out, let's pivot for a second. What did the author, John Norman, think he was doing? Because in his mind, he wasn't just writing fantasies. No, he believed he was launching nothing less than a new sexual revolution. So according to Norman, this revolution wasn't about having more sex. It was about having a different quality of sex. His whole argument was that the most powerful sexual organ you have is your brain. He wanted to lift sex up from being just a physical, biological function and move it into the world of the mind, of intellect, and most importantly, imagination. Norman draws a really sharp line here. He says the old sexual revolution just got us to the point where we could admit, okay, sex is a natural, pleasurable thing, fine. But his new revolution adds the key ingredient, that this natural function is happening inside a human being. And that means it involves everything that makes us human, our creativity, our ability to tell stories, our imagination. But this is where Norman's whole project gets its most controversial. Because he didn't just want to create fantasies, he actually tried to ground them in this biological and evolutionary argument for why men and women are supposedly wired for these roles of dominance and submission. So Norman's theory goes something like this. Evolution gave us man the hunter. Because of that, he says, it's just normal and natural for men to be the sexually aggressive ones, to be masters. And he connects this directly to hormones like testosterone. And he makes a similar case for women. He suggests that being submissive, maybe even having masochistic traits, actually would have had survival value. It would keep the woman at the fire, raising the kids, making sure the family unit stayed together and survived. But reality seems to tell a very different story. Pat Califia jumps in with this amazing counterpoint from her own experience in the S&M scene. She basically says, look around. Male biology and privilege haven't just created a world of dominant masters. In fact, they've created a whole lot of men who want nothing more than to submit to a powerful woman. And she pretty much dismisses the whole hormone argument as simplistic. She points out that, first of all, we all need both hormones. And second, some studies even suggest estrogen is linked to aggression. So this whole biological foundation Norman is trying to build, well, to put it mildly, it's pretty shaky. So, okay, let's leave the questionable biology to one side for a moment. What do these fantasies actually look like on the page? How did Norman turn all these ideas into actual scenarios? I mean, the titles alone tell you a lot. You've got these scenarios of capture and helplessness, right? Captured by pirates. I am sold in a slave market. But then you also have fantasies that flip power dynamics in the modern world, like the outwitted female executive. And what's really interesting is that some of them, like the male slave of the imperious queen, completely contradict his own rigid biological theories. And that variety is key. It suggests that the real power of fantasy is often in the thrill of turning expectations upside down, not just reinforcing them. Now, this is a super important point. Norman is very, very clear about the line between fantasy and reality, especially when it comes to the really charged stuff. He explores something like the rape fantasy as a powerful internal experience. But at the same time, he condemns the actual crime of rape as an ugly, brutal, horrifying act. For him, these two are in completely different worlds.
So if these are all just games, where is it all going? What's the point? And that brings us to Norman's ultimate, and maybe his most surprising justification for this whole project.
Norman insists that these fantasies have some strict prerequisites. This isn't about aggression between strangers. He lists affection and trust as the absolute foundation. Then you need imagination, a total willingness from both people, and, get this, a sense of humor. So in his view, this has nothing to do with hostility. It's all structured play that's built on a bedrock of genuine care.
And this all leads to his most audacious claim. Norman argues that because these fantasies demand total imaginative buy-in from both people, they are, by definition, games between equals. The pretend power imbalance, he says, can only work if it's built on real-world equality. And the surprising result of all this intense, shared play? He suggests that love just sneaks up on the players.
In the end, we come full circle, back to Pat Calafia for the final verdict. And she resolves her own paradox by basically compartmentalizing. She concludes that his work is fiction. It's about fantasy. It's not about politics or salaries. And when you judge it just as erotica, as a tool for couples who connect with this specific kind of fantasy, her assessment is simple. It's very effective.
Ultimately, the whole paradox of this book leaves us with a question we have to ask ourselves. When our private fantasies and our public politics crash into each other, which one tells us who we really are? The self that we believe in or the self that we desire?